CNC Talks with Jatinda.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we have people from all over the world tuning in today. So thanks for waiting, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We had some issues. My laptop decided to make all these crazy noises from the fan, try to switch the laptop. The microphone didn't work, and you know how the whole Windows things work. Sorry for the delay, and but hopefully we can cover up because we have a super exciting show today. As everyone knows, we've got Dave here from all the way from USA. And first of all, Dave, thank you so much for coming online. I don't know what's the time there, but must be a bit of an odd timing for you.
Yeah, it's 7 p.m. here, so it's not too late. It's not bad at all.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I should say TGIF to you because it's Friday morning there, right?
Yeah, no, it's all right. You know how we all hobbyists, we work 24/7, so I guess it doesn't matter. So I don't think to most of the guys, especially in US, you need much of an introduction, but guys here in Australia definitely need to know if they haven't already heard about you. So Dave's got this great YouTube channel where these guys come online, and they have great group of Mark and other guys. Sorry, I'm bad with names, so I won't be able to remember a lot of names, but I started listening to you guys quite a long time, and just hearing general talk, because you talk on quite a wide topics. But at the same time, Dave makes his own CNC machine. So he's got the designs and everything that he'll be talking a bit more on the show. And we'll be trying to understand a lot of things about making CNC, his journey, a lot of troubles, it's not an easy thing to make a CNC, all the way from hardware, electronics, to learning the first controller side of things, and then the cam side of things. So it's a big learning curve. One of the things we really want to talk and concentrate on today's show is how guys, especially in Australia, can use your designs to make machines. Because still here, and I can see Pete from New Zealand, he's online, and we've already talked about this. It's still quite hard to get parts and make stuff here in Australia and New Zealand. So I think the great thing about your design is it's so easy to make from general parts that you can go and get from hardware store. So we're going to talk about that. I'll just quickly start with Dave. If you can give a quick brief about your background into what you used to do and how you actually started making these machines, so people can initially it's trying to inspire people at this stage, because a lot of times it can get frustrating.
Okay, well, just looking over the chat, I see a lot of familiar names, so they've probably already heard this story before, but I'll try not to make it too boring. But I used to work as a kind of a sheet metal designer. Did 3D modeling and SolidWorks and stuff like that for sheet metal fabrication job shops. And, just one day I was sitting around, like everybody does at their boring job, wishing I could do something on my own, and got to thinking about some things that I could make to sell, kind of as a side thing. And I thought, well, I could probably do it by making templates and hand routing stuff. But, since I know CNC from sheet metal, how to program lasers and all that kind of stuff, that it'd be really cool to be able to do it with a CNC router. So when I started looking, and we're talking like early 2000, I guess. So back then, there's wasn't near as many choices as there are now. Everything I found was either way too expensive, or it was basically junk. I didn't think it was, it's like machines made from plastic and stuff like that. So I just thought, well, I think I can do better since I'm a sheet metal guy. I'll just design one out of sheet metal. So I did that, and had a little bit of success selling those for, I guess, about 5 years. And then when the economy here took a dive back around 2008 or so, when the real estate market and all that went south, I wasn't selling that many of them. So I thought, well, I'm just going to kind of take a break, and I won't advertise them. I'll just play around with mine, because I really didn't have time to play around with the one that I had built. So I did that for a while, and then again in I guess 2016, the X-Carve had come out, and that was pretty popular. You were seeing all kinds of YouTubers getting those, and so I thought, well, I'm going to design something that I think is a little sturdier than an X-Carve. So I came up with the Garage Works, and I did that for, well, I'm still doing that, as a matter of fact. But what I guess what really kind of put me out there as far as YouTube is concerned is, while I was enjoying playing with my machine, I'm also a woodworker, and I like to do different kinds of projects. And I would shoot a YouTube video, and I might use the CNC to do, I don't know, maybe just a small part of that project. But I would always get the haters, as I call them, that would say, "Oh yeah, that's easy for you to do, because you've got you got a CNC." And I guess it was around 2014. I just finished a video, and the one that I'd done before had got those kind of comments. So at the end of that video, I said, "Look, I know you guys, a lot of you out there don't like CNC stuff. You don't think it's real woodworking. I get it. But, it's really not that hard. The CNC stuff, it's really not that hard. If you know how to get online and watch this YouTube video, you could probably build a CNC." And I said, if anybody would like for me to do a video series on how to build a CNC router, leave a comment below or email me or whatever, and I'll do it. Well, boy, did I open a can of worms when I said that, because I got bombarded with emails and stuff. So I thought, well, okay, now I guess I got to do this. So I designed one in plywood, and just gave away the plans. And there's I don't really know how many sets I actually emailed out, because my computer crashed and I lost a lot of stuff. But I had already sent out over 4,000 sets of plans at that time. So just guessing, there's probably at least 5,000 sets of those plans out there. Now, whether everybody built it or not, I don't know, but I know a lot of folks did. But then, fast forwarding a little bit, back just a little over 2 years ago, I was working at a place, and I'm an older guy, so when they're trying to downsize, I'm the type they're going to try to get rid of, because they can let the younger guy that they can pay less stay on. So I got laid off from that job, and I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I was selling the Garage Works, but and selling different plans and stuff, but wasn't really doing enough to really to be able to afford to live, I guess. So I thought, well, I kind of had the Gatton CNC, or at least what's now known as the Gatton CNC. I kind of had it in my mind up here. So I came home when they laid me off that Monday. I came home and spent the next 4 or 5 days doing nothing but modeling SolidWorks. And by that weekend, I had it all done, and I thought, this is going to be a good one. So I did a YouTube video, announced that, and started doing the how to build it videos in my garage. And I guess, as they say, the rest is history, because there's now several hundred of those, at least in the United States and Canada, and there's quite a few other places too, since I've started offering just the plans.
So the machine that Peter's got, I can see him in the chat in New Zealand. Is that one of your designs, or he's got a different machine?
No, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Peter, you can put it in the chat there, but I think that's one of Joe's CNC designs, I believe.
Okay. Right.
But,
and so with this journey, because that's what I'm trying to concentrate from people who are getting into CNC, new guys. When was the first design you said? In which year? When you made it?
Well, if you're talking about the Gatton CNC, I did that one in June of 2016.
Okay. But the first machine, the one you said you made out of metal and everything.
Oh, that very first one, I did that back in, well, I started building them in 2005, and I went through a couple of different, because I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I know how to draw the sheet metal, but I had to, and I knew how CNC machines work, but it was still a lot of trial and error trying to get, all of it figured out. And it was really in 2007 when I came up with the design that, and that's the one I ended up selling. I probably sold, I don't know, probably about 100 or so of those, again, in United States and Canada. Right. But that would have been, that would have been 2007.
So we're looking at over like 10 years time, that's what I want to focus on, that, when you're making a machine, and you're right, because when you start, there isn't a set way, it depends on what first of all you want a machine, what kind of parts you can actually buy, because there's so much out there, and you can spend anything, there's no limit, but you have to set your budgets and everything.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to do when I designed that machine, sorry I had to take those headphones off, it was driving myself nuts hearing myself in my ear. One of the things I wanted to make sure I did with this last design is, one, I needed to make it where it's super easy to build. And the other thing that kind of happened by accident, sort of, is this design where I sell the kit parts of the majority of the gantry type parts and all the parts that really need the accuracy of the CNC, but the parts for the cross members of the gantry and stuff like that, they're just simple rectangles. So by me not having to ship those big long pieces, I can ship the parts I cut in just a small box, and it allows the people to take the plans, which it's all kind of based around using a half sheet of plywood or 48 by 48 sheet of plywood for the table. But now those plans allow anybody where they can just make the table wider or deeper or whatever, and they can adjust it, and then they just add however many inches or millimeters or whatever they want to the pieces that they have to cut. And so that's why the Gatton CNC is so popular, is because it's like I can sell a million different sizes of a machine because everybody customizes it just for the space they have in their shop.
Yeah, and it's a really good concept, because if you want to use a CNC, you are a builder anyways, so you're making stuff all the time, and that's why you would want to use a CNC. And if you have a design just like yours, then you have the flexibility, because then you have the experience on how to build stuff, but at the same time a reference design, and go out and as I said, you can just go to a hardware store and get most of the parts from there, cut them according to what they need, because someone might need to fit a big sheet on their machine, someone might to do a small job, and then rest just use the whole CNC concept.
Yeah, it's it's all kind of like when I sell the plans, it has every little nut, bolt, washer, lead screw, Acme nut, all that stuff is kind of spec'd out. But the things that I'm calling out are mainly good for folks in the U.S. and maybe in Canada they can get some of them. But for the guys that say live in Australia or something like that, it's easily adaptable to, like, instead of using a 1/2-inch diameter leaf screw, now you're talking a 12mm leaf screw.
Right.
I know you can probably find a part that's comparable enough to work without changing the design very much.
Right. Okay, so are you also shipping overseas now, those kits, those parts, or just mainly US?
Well, here's the thing, Jad. I've had ever since the get-go, I've had folks wanting me to ship the kits, and I'm like, I really don't have, I would ship them anywhere, except the problem is by the time you ship it to, say, Australia or New Zealand or, someplace like that, it's going to cost more for shipping than what you're paying for the parts just about. So that's why here recently I've just decided to go ahead and offer a plans only deal. And with that, they get the full scale DXF files with it as well. And then they, and I'm doing that for everybody. So even somebody in the US can do that. But it's kind of funny because ever since I started offering that plan deal, it seems like every single one that somebody in the US has bought those plans, they get them, and I don't know whether they start or just look at the plans, but then they'll go, well, how much will it cost me to get the kit? So what I do is, if they change their mind and want me to cut the parts, I just credit them whatever the cost of the plans are. So it's still not costing them anymore. It's just like they bought a kit to start with. But yeah, so by offering the plans with the DXF files and everything, anybody anywhere, should be able to build one now.
Okay, so if people want to buy those plans, then what's your website? I'll probably add those in the description later, but do you want to just quickly tell them your website, please?
Yeah, it's real easy to find because, my name's Dave Gatton and my website is www.davegatton.com. So it's right. You can just go there and you'll see the different things across the top where I've got purchase plans, and I got all the videos in order there of how to, so they can watch the build videos. And some people like to work off plans. Some people would rather watch a video of somebody building it, to see how to do it. So,
right. Okay. And just another question, the kind of design that you've built, that's another point when people are making their machines. And now you can be either, depending on what kind of job you want to machine, you might be machining very hard materials or softer materials like woods or plastics. And I've seen people getting confused a lot of times. They might just need to machine something soft, let's say like a piece of plastic, and they started making a machine that's really heavy. It might be really good for metals also, and that might be overkill. But at the same time, people might make a gantry that's too light, and it flexes, there's vibration, and all sorts of issues. It's a huge topic on its own. Can you give me some insight on that? The design that you offer, what kind of jobs you can do on that machine, and why in particular you designed this machine? Because as I just mentioned, there are all sorts of machines. What kind of your main market or main focus of your design?
Well, Jad, the reason I came up with a different plywood machine, I know a lot of people don't like plywood and think, oh, that's not a real CNC, but when you, it's all in the design. If you build it with a boxed frame, I've done a video, you may have seen it, where I'm sitting on the gantry riding it. It's plenty strong if you design it the right way. And plywood is a pretty stable material. It's not like a regular 2x4 board where the moisture is going to make it twist and bow and everything. It may expand and contract a little bit, but not at all like a regular piece of wood. So It's a stable material. And the reason I wanted to build this is, from the very beginning, when I made that statement at the end of that video, like, hey, anybody that wants to, thinks this is hard, I can show them it's easy. It's that I want people, if I just hate people saying, well, I want a CNC, but I can't afford one. Well, that argument's not valid with me, because with my kit, you don't have to, unlike buying a turnkey CNC, you can buy the kit, you can, it tells you everything you need. And then you can, as you get the money, buy this part. I know guys that have built a Gatton CNC kit and it's taken them, 8-10 months or a year or something like that, because they're saving up the money for all this stuff. So, I just didn't like hearing folks say, well, I'd really like to have one of those, but I can't afford it. That's been my whole thing, is trying to show people that you can build a CNC out of inexpensive materials. And when I say inexpensive, I mean, it still adds up to be a lot, but you don't have to buy it all at once. But you can still have a great machine. I mean, I am still amazed at when, on my show, I do like a show and tell every so often, and guys will send me pictures of the projects they've made on these plywood CNCs, and it just blows me away. I'm like, I'm like, all these guys that knock the plywood and say, well, that's not a real CNC. I don't care what they say, because the proof is in the project. I've milled aluminum with mine. There's some people that may have something as small as a little palm router on it, and then there's other people like myself that's got a water-cooled spindle. So,
you're right, because that's just like any other tool. So, every tool has its own limits, even if it's a hand tool. You need to really know what tool that tool can do. And it's not just like, the frame. There's so many things in the CNC itself. And I see this argument all the time. People would say they don't have the money, but they don't, then they want to go and put servo motors on the machine. And if you look at the kind of job they want to machine, they will never ever need a servo motor. But because they say, oh no, I read on these forums and they say servos are the best, they have the best torque. Okay, they're good, but you can't have an engine from a big truck or something put in your car because it's got more power. It really depends. And in fact, I've heard in some applications where they need a lot of accuracy, it might be some different lab applications or something in robotics, they actually prefer to use stepper motors than servo motors, because from design point of view, they're two different things, and both are different tools. I treat them as two different tools. What do you really want to use it for that purpose. For example, if you're engraving and your feed rates are going to be always really low, you don't need to spend all that money on a servo motor. For example, you might be able to just get one servo motor and a drive, and on the stepper side you'll probably get 4 of them. So there's a huge difference, and end of the day, if you're not even using that servo, it's no benefit, and definitely then it's going to go out of budget.
Yeah, and another thing that I might mention too, and you know this, I think, but when I did the first plywood machines, and even all of them, I mean, I've always recommended the Xylotex kit for people who were like myself, because I'm not like you, Jack. You're an electronic type guy and you know all that stuff. I'm just a dumb old mechanical guy. So I didn't want to have to learn how to do all that. And when I found that kit and it came and it's all color coded, and that's why I started recommending those, because because everybody would say, well, I know how to build it, I'm a woodworker, but I don't know that stuff. Well, here again, you don't need to know that. As long as you know which color yellow and red and blue is, you can plug it up and run this thing. Now, I have since learned a lot of, a little bit more about electronics from wiring up different machines. But when I started, I didn't know any of that stuff.
And I still remember when you were connecting that new stepper drives with the Masso, and the drive was faulty. And I remember it became a nightmare. And it's just not you. There are so many people who are using similar drives, and the brand new drives come in faulty. And the problem is, when you don't have the experience, you haven't gone through it, you don't know what's wrong. And that puts a lot of pressure when you're building a machine, because there's just so much happening. I've heard from people, Meso has been more of a hobby thing. I started myself using PC-based systems, and I struggled for years, with those systems. And at the same time, I met other people, and they're like, "Hey, we're trying to make a machine so we can cut parts, but we end up becoming, guys who are building a CNC controller. It's not my job. I want to cut parts, And you're exactly right. You don't want to do research on stepper motors. Is it like 6-wire, 4-wire? Even I get confused with that. There's just so many out there. So it's right. You need to really do your research and buy something that has the right information, because you can go on eBay, buy this stuff, and don't have any documentation about it, no support. If you go on our website, most of the support we are actually doing is for third-party drives. It's not even our product, but what happens is they buy this stuff from eBay or somewhere, and after that, no one supports them. And we try to, from our experience and talking to other people, we say, okay, maybe, someone else can help you. But once you have the parts, if it's properly documented, it really helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The good thing about the kits I was suggesting was, since it was plug and play, all I did was take screenshots of my settings, and I said, as long as you plug everything up and put the stepper motor on the same side that I do, and make everything just like I do, here's the settings. You don't even have to know what they mean. Just put them in just like this picture, and you'll be off and running. And I have people all the time email me, thanking me for the stuff that I've done, because they thought that they never could have a CNC machine. They didn't think they were smart enough. And I'm like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I think it's documentation plays a big role. If someone's already spent the time and making in those little steps as you've done, that's a huge difference. Because I've seen people, they expect the other side. They're like, okay, if you are building a CNC and I've sold you something, then I expect you to know everything about CNC. But most of the time I've seen, if people are making their own CNC, a lot of times it's either people learning or they can't afford it. And if they can afford it, why would they go and make their own machine? They would just go and buy one, So, and yeah, documentation is the key for sure. So yeah, with your design, now when you started building the machine and you were selecting the kind of parts you were trying to use for your design, and still, again, I'm going to repeat this because in the US it's still much easier. There's so many other options to get parts. What were your constraints with your design? It was obviously cost would mean that you can only use these parts, but at the same time sourcing parts. How did you say, this is what I'm going to use?
Well, I'm one of those guys that is a firm believer in, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So a lot of the components that I, spec out in the drawings of the machines today are the same ones I did 10 years ago. And like that old metal Sidewinder, if you go back and look at some of my early videos or some of my project videos where you see that old gray metal Sidewinder machine in the back of my shop there, it had the same lead screws, the same, everything the same couplers, same Acme nuts, same everything as what I use today. I feel very fortunate to have found, the lead screws are nothing special. They're just a 1/2-inch diameter 5-start lead screw that McMaster Carr sells. And I don't know if you're familiar with McMaster Carr, but they're a big supplier. They got, they're like a Granger or whatever. They got everything you can think of. And I have one of those about 30 minutes from my house. The Acme nuts and the couplers, like I said, I feel very fortunate. I found a guy in Texas, Dumpster CNC, Tim Feinstein, I think is his name. And he made, what I really liked about the coupler is the end that went on the lead screw. He actually taps them so that they match those threads, so that they screw on, and then you tighten them down instead of just snugging them. Instead of having to put the lead screw in a lathe and turn a smooth spot and put it on there, it made it real easy, because now these DIY people that are making these machines, all they got to worry about is cutting that lead screw to the right length and filing the burrs off. They don't have to worry about turning it down to put a coupler on. They just screw that one on. Right. And Tim out there at Dumpster CNC, that's the only person I've ever seen make them like that. So I feel lucky to have found stuff that's good components that work well. And like I said, if it ain't broke, I don't fix it. I keep using the same stuff.
That's good. That's good. And there is a lot of push everywhere in manufacturing, especially in Australia. I think that's what, like, when I go to these seminars or the government organized meetings, there's a big push for advanced manufacturing, to take it to school so kids get a bit more exposure. I think still in US, there's definitely a bit more exposure. One of the things with your machines, because I can see people starting their businesses from their garage. That's how I started, Did you have any clients who are actually using your machines as a small business to make and sell parts? Do you know any good success stories?
Yes, there's, probably most of the people that have built my kit, probably a lot of them weren't in business to start with. But when you get a machine that's capable of producing the kind of projects and 3D carving and stuff like that, and you make something and then your neighbor sees it and they go, "Oh, can you make me one of that?" And the next thing you know, they're in business whether they want to be or not, and I know a lot of people that's happened to, that they got the CNC. One fella in particular built a Gatton, and he does a lot of the craft show type places or craft fairs. And he has a booth there, and he does a lot of handmade stuff as well as the CNC stuff. So that's kind of, helped his business, being able to produce some things, even though it's CNC stuff, being able to make a lot of things for it to go in his booth.
That's a great point. So, you don't have to go a high-end CNC to make money. That's what I want to concentrate on. I want people to know that, even if you have a small CNC in your garage and something that you've built yourself, because then another key point is you can fix it yourself. A lot of, other big machines, and I'm not trying to compare, big machines have a different role, but what I'm saying is that you have your time, you have your passion, you can spend your time on that machine. And even from that small machine in your garage, you can start, learning, because the key, ways to use the CNC, it's exactly the same, even if it's a small machine or it's a bigger machine. So down the track, if it's a young person, a student, and he starts playing with the small machine in his garage, by the time he spends years on that machine learning, if he goes out to look for a job, it becomes much easier, because it's the same G codes, it's the same software you use, and exactly same concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right. And again, I'm a firm believer of just what you said, is you learn more when you build it yourself, because now if anything goes wrong with it, you probably know how to fix it, or at least you should, because you put every nut and bolt on the thing. So
yeah, no, you're right. I remember when I was doing my bachelor's of mechatronics, and we had this manufacturing course, and part of that was we were supposed to machine a little gear in acrylic. And in 1 year, the time you spend in that course, you would get, I think, 30 minutes to spend on the machine. And it was a group of 5. Okay. So, And that's what you got as an exposure. So I'm not going to name any institutions here, but that's how people try to teach you. They're like, okay, you've learned CNC in 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, I'm still learning. Every day someone emails me, they're like, hey, can you add this G code to the controller? I'm like, okay, let me Google this first. What is this G code? So there is so much happening. There's so much practice you need, so much time you need to spend on those machines. And that also brings me to the point, and I've mentioned that into that email to you, Dave. One thing I'm really curious, because I've worked for clients in the US, even with my earlier job when I used to work for oil and gas companies designing electronics, but still I've been really keen into looking at how different cultures have different attitudes for different things. I've seen and worked for clients in Asia and in Australia. So one of the things I do realize, and that's what makes America in a way different with the new technologies, is I see people doing a lot of hands-on stuff. They love to build stuff, and I get amazed with that. I never had that kind of a group around me who were that passionate. So it always, I'm always asking this question, and maybe you can give some feedback into this, why people so passionate, because what I see is those groups popping up, working together, and then you end up creating an industry. So that's what I'm really, really interested to understand. And over time, because today what we are doing this show, honestly, Dave, a few months back, when John from NYCNC, he was here in Australia, and we guys were having a dinner, and we were just talking, and I had two young guys there, and they were talking about, they were so excited. I could just see the eyes were just popping out. They're like, hey, we can't believe this is happening in Australia. We are getting together. That was probably one of the very few meetups that happened. And they said, we need to do something here. And then we started asking why it's not happening here. And no one has an answer. Obviously, population-wise, there's a difference. It's very less population here in Australia. But at the same time, I still think people in general, in UK also, and in US, that's what I've seen. They just love to build stuff. Do you have any input on that? Maybe just an eye-opener for me.
Well, I'm not sure what the reason is for that. I know myself, I've always liked tinkering with stuff. And like I said, the whole reason I started building CNCs is because I figured I could build one cheaper than I could buy one. So that cost was part of it. And how us Americans are, we're all about bigger is better. So, I kid some of the guys that have bought the Gatton CNC kits, because they'll build the biggest, they'll build it as big as they can, and, fill up their whole garage with it. And then and then everything they make is like this big, they're using that lower left-hand corner. So it's, that may be part of it too, that we just like to build things so big that it's cheaper to build them ourselves. I don't know. One thing I do want to mention though, and there's, probably at least a dozen or so folks out there in the chat that I'm talking about with the Gatton CNC and the GarageWorks CNC as well. I have Facebook groups for both of those, and those, and I say guys, but when I say guys, I mean guys and gals. They have become the greatest tech support team in the world for me, because when somebody posts a question, or maybe it's somebody new that hadn't even got into it yet, and they're just trying to test the waters, and they put a question on Facebook or whatever, before I usually even see the question, they've already got, all these guys that have built one are answering the questions for me. So, when people say, well, I don't know what kind of tech support you got, I have to say, I have the best tech support in the world, because I've got hundreds of technicians out there. Everybody that has built one is a technician. And so everybody's happy to share what they know and what, if they had a problem with that, they go, oh yeah, that happened to me. I know exactly what that is, and they can help them out. So.
And that was actually my next question, that regarding the CNC community itself, and I think you've answered it pretty well. And that's my experience too. People in general into this whole CNC, because the reason why they're doing this is obviously there's the passion, and when you have a passion, people just get together and you get the best results. And I think if there wasn't this community, or because there's so much to learn. You don't, one person can't have all the knowledge, but the right people getting together is really, really important.
Yeah, and I'm very thankful that I have those people that I just talked about to help answer questions, because I'm so old now, Jat, that if somebody messages me and they'll say, I'm trying to do this with Mach 3, what do I put that setting at? I know how to do it, but I can't go from memory. I have to go, hold on a second, let me pull it up on my computer, and because I have to tell them, what pages. I don't try to go from memory anymore. So
now you're right, and it's probably I'll make sure that's definitely not the age case. it happens to me all the time, and I tell people that's why I have a controller in front of me, powered up 24/7, just in case I got an email or something, I open up, because as we said, Dave, there's so much information. It's not just, I tell people, it's not like having a printer that you just press Control P and that's it, it's done. There's so much to it, like the tool settings, and we haven't covered nothing yet. It's more of just a broader view to tell people that if you really want to achieve something, if you really want to do something, a CNC, don't get scared. You can build up in your garage. And as you also mentioned that 10 years ago it was so hard to get parts, and they've become so much cheaper now, and it's become much easier to get parts now. So
yeah, I don't know how things are in like in Australia or New Zealand where Peter is or something like that, but it would seem to me that with what is it, AliExpress, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I look on there and it seems like I could get anything I wanted. It might take a while to get here, but it just seems like it's possible to get any kind of CNC part that I would want.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, where you're at.
Because they ship worldwide, and you're right. But at the end of the day, it's still your passion, because you have to still do your research. You have to look into stuff what you really want. And in fact, I think now it's too much stuff out there that you have to really go through and see what's going to work for you.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. There's probably too much stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that's inexpensive but good, but then there's a lot of stuff that's cheap and crap. As we will, like I bought and you mentioned a while ago when I was wiring up that Masso, I kept thinking it's got to be me. I must be doing something wrong. But what it was is I bought a 4-axis kit from some company. I won't even mention their name, but one of the drivers was dead on arrival. It didn't even light up, no power, wouldn't do anything. And another one, which is what really caused me the problem, it lit up, which made me think it was good, but it ended up being bad. And I was pulling my hair out going, why when I hit the Y, because I have 2 motors on the Y axis, why is it always racking? It's like this one moves the right amount and this one moves about half as much. Well, what it was is the driver. Once I swapped wires and changed out another drive, then it wasn't me at all. I had it wired right. It's just that the thing was bad. So you got to be careful, when you're sourcing parts. And that's where it comes in, where you ask a lot of questions for people who have built them before. Like where'd you get your stuff? Are you happy with it? Did it, everything arrived undamaged and stuff like that. So
it's gone so crazy. I don't know how the whole manufacturing happens in China, but I can't say the names, but I was working with the manufacturer, of motors, and they told me there's apparently a black market in China, and you can buy designs for drives, for motors, whatever you want to make, and start producing them. So that's why if you look, a lot of products that come from there, the drives or other parts, they look the same. The only difference is you'll see is just the name. So when they're screen printing, they just have a different name, but inside, and then they try to compete with each other is on the basis of dropping down the cost. And the way they drop down the cost is they change the caps, for example, in these drives. So rather than having a high capacity caps, they put little ones. They don't last long, or you don't get enough amps. Little things like those. So even if you see the drive from the outside looks the same, inside it might be a totally different story. So surprises all the time.
Well, I've heard that there's a company here that at least ships from the U.S. And, of course, there's, like you said, their drivers look exactly the same as these other drivers. The screen printing is a little different. But what I've heard the difference is with them is that they have their own in-house quality control. So I guess when they get them in, they're putting them on a board or checking them and testing them, and throwing out the old ones. Whereas the other company just, ships you 4 of them, and they might work, they might not. Yes,
exactly. Because again, there's so much cost cutting. They can't afford to get them checked. They just, rather than, the next door factory making, $500,000, these guys want to make $1 million so they can make some money out of it. And that's how it works. And I think over time, it's kind of, once people learn, it's initially when you're getting into CNC, you don't know these things. And that's where, you have those experiences that you don't know. Is it you who's doing it wrong, or it's the actual stuff, those drives, what's not working? And that can be a bit of an issue for someone new. Yep, so cool. What's your future plans, Dave? What are you doing with any more new designs coming up? What's happening?
Well, I don't know.
Right.
I've actually, I sometimes, I don't know what's wrong with me, but sometimes I can't even sleep at night because it's like no matter how tired I am and I lay down, it's like the wheels start turning and I start thinking about something else. I'm like, well, I haven't made one of those yet. So I don't know. There may be something new coming out in the works. Like I said, the Gatton CNCs continue to sell well, the kits and the plans. So I'll definitely keep those going. The GarageWorks CNC, those I sell. I mean, they sell okay. They're not near as popular as the Gatton simply because like I said, the Gatton you can kind of save up and buy it as you have the money, buy the parts as you have the money, and plus you can customize it as far as size, which is a big advantage than the GarageWorks. But I don't know. I've got some other things I've been thinking about. I really don't know what I'm going to do. No major announcements here on your show. Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, no, I know, because then you have to try to be on time, and I get into trouble a lot of times with that. Yeah, no, that's all good. So, Dave, you mentioned so we covered quite a few things on your design, and I'm glad you mentioned about those stepper drives because, in fact, we got a similar feedback, and we are in fact been designing our own stepper drives, and again, not announcing any dates. It's all going to be more plug and play, just like the Masso. One question, and it's going to be more of a feedback for someone like us who are into control electronics and the controller. So you've got rid of most of the pain points from building a machine, and you're giving putting a good stepper drive system that's nicely documented. Everything is nice, so at least people don't have to worry about these two things. So when it comes to the controller side of things, and again, I'm not just saying about Masso or any other software in general, what are still the key pain points that the clients face? Setting up, wiring up. It's more of a feedback for me to see what's still missing out there and how we can help on that.
Well, there's, Jack, with my experience, I've always tried to, I've spent the time to figure out all this stuff so that you don't have to. I got all the headaches over with. If you build it and you use exactly what I use the settings it's all right there. I've already done all the work for you. I made it easy. But then I've also, because I don't sell a controller and stepper motors and things like that with the machines, I just say, okay, it's got the bolt pattern for an EMA 23. If you don't know electronics, here's what I recommend, because it's plug and play. If you do know electronics, have at it. Go build whatever you want. And so, there's all kinds of things. There's guys with Gattons running the Xylotex. There's some running the Masso. There's some running the Gecko. There's some running the Lead Shine. I mean, you name it. There's that many different kinds of, steppers and controllers, drivers on it. So, I would just try to find out when somebody's talking to me. I'm like, do you know about electronics? And they go, no, I don't know anything. I go, okay, well, you can still do this, but just keep it simple. Don't try new stuff. Just do what's already tried and true. What we already know works, and you'll be happy. And I tell the folks the same thing with, most of them don't listen to me, I don't think. But what I always tell folks is if you don't really know about electronics or wiring, and that's not your strong suit, build a machine, get it going, put in your Mach 3 settings or UC 100 or whatever it is you're using, get it running and have a little fun with it. Then worry about adding homing switches and limit switches and, all this other stuff, because if you don't already know how to do that, and you wire it all up and then something doesn't work, now it's harder to troubleshoot. I always try to get folks to just get it running, get all the mechanical stuff and get the driver, get it jogging, and then run stuff, because you can always set the zero anywhere. Worry about all that, the bells and whistles later.
No, you're right, because because when you're building a CNC, there's so much happening. There's so many things that have to work perfectly, and if you say, okay, I know my calibration settings, all those things, and I'm going to make it run for the first time. I'm going to make it run perfectly. It never happens. Even when we do support on our forums or emails, we tell people that, okay, because we get an email saying that I try to do this, and nothing works, and we say, okay, let's go in little steps. First, is your motor running? Okay, they're like, but no, this calibration is not working, it's not homing. I'm like, no, is your motor working? Yes, ticked. Then you go to the next step, because everything might be still working fine. Just those little steps, when you miss one thing in the chain, it might stop everything else, and you're right. And later, once you have a machine working, then you can pull out one part, start playing with that, explore a bit, and learn from it. Then you know that you have to just concentrate on that one bit that you've changed, rather than the whole machine itself.
Yeah. And again, it gets back to what I've always said. This isn't rocket science. You just have to slow down, take a deep breath, and when something's if everything was running fine yesterday, and you go out to your shop tomorrow and now all of a sudden something's not working, you have to slow down and think, well, what has changed between yesterday and today? Oh, that's right, I added that, and now it's not, you just have to, like I said, I like taking baby steps. Even when I added the homing switches to mine, I ran one and made sure it worked. And then when I saw how it worked, I'm like, okay, I think I got this. And then I ran another one, I checked it. And then I ran the third one, But, some guys will run the whole thing, and then they'll message me and go, man, I got these things all wired up and it's not working. And I'm like, I'm not sure I can help you, because, take it all back off and go one at a time or something.
Yes. Now, especially if you're you're doing something for the first time, doing it in steps is the most important thing. Once you have experience, you already know those little tricks. And I still remember when I used to work for the oil and gas companies, and they used to actually drill horizontal drilling rather than vertical. So if they want to put a pipe down a river or something, so they would start drilling from one side and the pipe would come out from the other side. And they had all these sensors and everything, and the guys being trained for it, but they always said it's like black magic, and that was practice. The new guy can still see the same screen, the same data, but he would miss the mark, And this guy with 10 years experience, he looks at it, he's like, nah, you got to offset it a bit or whatever. So they're always little tricks. You can't 100% document everything, Even if you put in all the dot points videos online, I think most of the trouble happens when people try to do it all together. They're like, oh, that seems super easy, and I'm going to wire everything together, because every setup, every machine is different. Someone might be using a different motor, different sensor, different switch, or the direction of your axis. Sometimes you flip the axis or something. So yeah, no, I think that's anyone new who's getting into CNC, even through your mechanical bit, electronics, software, do it in little steps and confirm that step works, and then you move to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So Dave, I think we've been able to bring in a lot of great points today, and that was my whole idea, to slowly build up this community here. And the great thing is now, with internet and things like these, there's no limit. We can't say, hey, we're going to be just based in Sydney and have a support group or something. We can use everyone's experiences, and as I said, different cultures, different places bring different kind of experience, and it's been just awesome. And I know I've been not coming more live on your shows, but I've been watching them most of the time. Just too much happening here with too many new things going on. But yeah, I would strongly tell people. I think it's our Sunday when you go live. Is it your Saturday you go live, Dave?
It's Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is,
so it's roughly 9 or 10.
Is that around lunchtime? I think your time.
10-ish or something, 10 or 11. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I would say to subscribe to Dave's channel, and they have all these topics, and over time you can probably put in a request, and everyone can share their thoughts on that topic. It can be anything, because the best thing I've seen on Dave's show is that it's not like just Dave's machine or other stuff. We got Mark. I've got Beck. She just put that in the message. I've got a name before. So we got JV, and these guys, do all these different videos about how to use 3D packages, CAM packages, and I've personally learned myself a lot. So do have a look on those videos, and it's a great community to be asking any questions. And Dave, thank you so much. I think a lot of people are gonna get motivated, excited, and learn from your experiences. And yeah, hopefully we'll see a few Gatton CNCs in Australia.
I'd love to have some there, and thank you again for having me on, Jad. I feel honored to be on your show here. Like you said, the internet has made the world a much smaller place. So there's no reason why there has to be an Australian CNC community or a US CNC. It could be all one big community.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. No, great. No, I must thank you again. And it's been an exciting show. So yeah, I think the time's up. And again, sorry everyone for being late today. But hopefully everyone enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next time. So regarding the shows, please do, because as I said, even this show, people have been talking about how do we get together with the CNC community, and that's where I thought, okay, Dave's going to be a great person for this. Please leave your thoughts on the chat, or email us. What would you like to see in the next show? What topic you want to cover up? And yeah, we'll try to have a show.
And make sure you leave a thumbs up on the way out too.
Yeah, I forget all those things all the time, but yeah, thank you, Dave. So yeah, everyone, thank you, and Dave, thank you so much again.
All right, very good. Thank you. Good night, everybody.